Reprints, reprints, reprints. I'm always saying that I want to see more great reprints in Magic the Gathering, and wow, the upcoming Magic Foundations really delivers in that department. There are so many great reprints in Magic Foundations, and a lot of them are a really big deal for 60-card formats like Standard and even Modern and Pioneer. This set feels like a real Magic set in all the best ways, and the pile of high-quality reprints are a big reason for that. All told, there are well over 350 reprints in the set if you include the starter collection and beginner box as well. What's the difference between a starter collection and a beginner box, you ask? Wrong video. I'll talk about that later. This is the top 10 reprints from Foundations video. Now, if you want to see me talk about new card designs from Foundations, that video came out a few days ago and you can view it here. But this video is the one where we're talking about the best reprints, and not necessarily in terms of price, but in terms of their effect on 60-card formats, such as Standard, with an eye towards formats like Pioneer and Modern as well. Are you ready? Because it's reprinting time! But first, how long has it been since you got a new mattress? For many of you, it's probably been too long. I get it though. Who wants to go through the hassle of going to the mattress store, trying out a bunch of mattresses, haggling over a price, driving it home? How do you even drive it home? The whole process is just a nightmare. But it doesn't have to be a nightmare if you shop with Helix Sleep, sponsor of today's video. Helix mattresses are the best of the best. I've been sleeping on one for almost 3 years at this point, and genuinely it's the best sleep experience I've ever had. It was easy to pick out too. I just took their sleep quiz and it matched me with the Helix Luxe Dusk mattress, since I'm a back sleeper who likes a firmer mattress. But you can plug in whatever your personal sleep preferences are, and Helix will match you with the perfect mattress for your needs. They have got a massive selection of 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe and Ultra Premium Elite mattresses. They've got the Helix Plus, designed for big and tall sleepers, and even a Helix Kids mattress endorsed by child sleep and medical experts. The mattress gets delivered rolled up in a box right to your front door, so no need to worry about how you'll get it home from the mattress store. I know it can be kind of nerve-wracking buying something off the internet that you've never gotten a chance to try, but Helix has you covered on that front too, because they offer a 100-night sleep trial. That's actually a much better test than you lying on it for a couple of minutes in your clothes at the mattress store with your shoes on probably, and then, well, you're committed to it. Helix mattresses are at a great price right now thanks to Helix's Black Friday sale, running for a limited time. You can get 25% off site-wide, 2 free pillows, and a free bedding bundle if you get their Luxe or Elite mattress. So if you want to upgrade your mattress, just visit helixsleep.com/Tolarian to get that 25% discount. Thank you, Helix Sleep, for sponsoring this video. Let's begin with a highly underrated reprint for Standard and possibly even Pioneer. Why do I say underrated? Well, that's because in the long history of Magic the Gathering, Zombify has rightfully been considered overcosted for its effect. But in the context of Standard specifically, it's actually the cheapest, no restriction, no downside version of this effect that Standard has seen in the modern era. Zombify is a 4-mana mono-black reanimate spell, originally printed all the way back in Odyssey. Remember Odyssey, kids? Remember Odyssey, parents of kids? Remember Odyssey, grandparents of kids? Anyway, you know what? Don't answer this. Look it up in the history books. Zombify doesn't look like a very good card at face value, but Wizards has quietly printed more and more good reanimator enablers over the past few years, with plenty of discard outlets, self-mill, and of course fantastic payoffs in the form of Atraxa, Grand Unifier, and Vault-Born Tyrant. In Pioneer, the discard outlets are even better thanks to Fable of the Mirror Breaker and Smuggler's Copter. Zombify is perfectly costed to be tutored for, and cast off Beseech the Mirror. You can entomb your big creature by pairing Cynical Loner with a vehicle, mount, or Sentinel Stalwart. In fact, check this out. Cast Stalwart on turn 1 and Loner on turn 2. Then tap the Stalwart to Loner, add a black mana, and cast Duress. In main phase 2, Loner's survival Survival will trigger. Put Atraxa into your graveyard, then on your next turn, play another land and tap Loner again to your Stalwart to cast Zombify on your Atraxa. Bada bing, bada boom, turn 3 Atraxa with a Duress backup. Pretty spicy, but what other reprints made our list? Well, coming up next is Genesis Wave, a fantastic ramp payoff for heavy green decks. Despite this card's popularity in formats like Commander, it's hardly been reprinted since its first appearance in Scars of Mirrodin. Genesis Wave costs triple green and X generic mana and reads, reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put any number of permanent cards with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest into your graveyard. You do need a lot of mana to really pop off with this card, given that triple green base cost, but there's ways to generate a ton of mana in Standard currently. Remember, we're only a few months removed from the best deck in Standard running 3 or 4 copies of Virtue of Strength. Keep in mind too that you don't necessarily need to cast it for X equaling 7 to get your full mana's worth. Even if X equals, say, 5, you can put upwards of 5 mid-sized permanents into play, at which point you shouldn't have any trouble winning. The best home for Genesis Wave, in my opinion, is the mono green elf deck, which just got a ton of heaters in Foundations, one of which we'll get to a little later on this list. A card that isn't actually on our list is Elvish Archdruid, which taps to add mana for every elf you control. Combine this with 3 Tree City in your mono green elf deck, and you'll be able to put 10 plus permanents into play with Genesis Wave easily. Check it out. Boros Charm is back in Standard. Between this and Bolt Wave, the new functional reprint of Lava Spike, and another reprint that we'll get to later on this list, Burn players are sure to be very happy with Foundations. Not just Burn players though, the Red X Prowess deck may also want this card, as all 3 modes are useful in that deck at various times. Sometimes you'll want to give your big mouse double strike, helpfully triggering Valiant. Sometimes you'll need to use it as a protection spell to save your creatures from your opponent's board wipes. Boros mana isn't ideal for aggressive strategies at the moment, since there's currently no red-white Verge land, and you'd really prefer not to play tap lands in your aggro deck. But that's sure to change eventually, possibly as soon as Aether Drift. When it does, get ready to charm your opponents directly to their face. I have to say, it's nice to see Boros Charm back in a format where it will actually get to be a modal spell again. Next up, we have a powerful Kindred payoff that hasn't been legal in Standard for about a decade. It's Cronco Mobboss, a 4-mana red legendary goblin that can tap to make X goblins, where X is equal to the number of goblins you control. After Foundations enters Standard, there will be 53 Standard legal cards that either are goblins or create goblins. And some of them are even good. The real reason to be excited by Cronco in Standard, though, is how well he pairs with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Get some +1/+1 counters on a few goblins in play, exile Cronco under Soul Cauldron, and you'll have an exponentially growing board of 1/1 goblins. Hey, you know how you can get +1/+1 counters on some of those goblins in play? With another Cronco. This time it's Cronco, Baron of Tin Street. You just need an artifact in play to sacrifice, and all of a sudden every goblin in play gains Cronco Mobboss's ability. This can get out of hand very quickly. It's worth noting that this will be the first time Cronco Mobboss will be legal in Pioneer as well. In Pioneer, you've got a lot more and a lot stronger goblins, including the powerful card advantage engine Conspicuous Snoop. It's also a lot easier to get the Cronco Soul Cauldron interaction going, since Grumgully the Generous gives +1/+1 counters to every goblin that enters play, which can in turn tap to activate Cronco's ability if they have haste, which they can get pretty easily thanks to Goblin War Chief. All that is to say, Cronco Mobboss's reprinting in Foundations is indeed a really big deal. Next up is a powerful tutor that hasn't really been out of Standard for that long, but since the last time it was in Standard, it's gotten a lot easier to mitigate its downside. Wishclaw Talisman is a 2-mana black artifact from the original Eldraine set that gives you any card you want from your deck, but for a price. You have to give it to your opponents so they can do the same. Of course, if they do, you get to tutor for one more thing, but ultimately you'd be better off if you can just tutor for one card and not give your opponent the opportunity to tutor for any cards. But how could you possibly do that, you ask? Well, you just have to sacrifice it while its ability is on the stack. It's easy to do these days thanks to a mechanic from the more recent visit to Eldraine, Bargain. Torch the Tower is the bargain spell that works best with Wishclaw Talisman, since it's both the most powerful instant speed bargain spell, and it only costs 1 mana. You can also sacrifice it to something like Fanatical Offering or Bartlemy de Presidio, the latter of which could be a big deal given the ever-growing number of combos that Bartlemy enables. The main thing holding Wishclaw Talisman back at the moment is that it would really shine in a simple and mana-efficient A+B combo deck, and there aren't very many in Standard that fit that criteria at the moment. But 5 years is a long time for Wishclaw to be legal, so I will be keeping an eye out for potential new combos as we get more and more sets in the format. Alright, we've made it to the top half of the list, and next up is Omniscience, possibly the most powerful permanent in all of Magic, provided you can get it into play, of course. Unfortunately, Omniscience costs 10 mana. Fortunately, there are a lot of ways to put a 10 mana permanent into play for a lot less these days. Kona, our rescue bestie, can do it from your hand. Reenact the Crime and Squirming Emergence can do it from the graveyard. The Adventure on Bramble Familiar can mill it over and then put it into play for 7 mana, and also for 7 mana, you can read ahead on the World spell to put Omniscience and another permanent into play at the same time. Number 4 on our list is one of the best shock variants of all time, a card so good that it's even a staple of most vintage cubes, Burst Lightning. A 2 damage, any target burn spell for 1 red mana. It also has Kicker for 4 generic mana to make it deal 4 damage instead. Burst Lightning will immediately become one of the best 1 mana removal spells in Standard. The flexibility is a really big deal. Yes, it kills a lot of the same cheap stuff that Torch the Tower and Cut Down do, but it can also go to face, and of course, be kicked to really go to face. Generally, Burst Lightning is at its best in aggressive and tempo decks, where its ability to hit any target is more likely to come up. That's because your opponent is more likely to have 4 or less life when you're attacking them consistently. But don't count out Burst Lightning's utility in more controlling shells either. Slower decks love killing big creatures and often don't mind spending a bit of extra mana to kill something larger too. The biggest downside to Burst Lightning is it doesn't kill Sheoldred, even when kicked. Oh no! But there are still a host of other relevant creatures a kicked Burst Lightning does kill. This will also be Burst Lightning's first time in Pioneer, where it could potentially give Fiery Impulse a run for its money. Number 3 on the list is a reprint that Commander fans will love to see, but it has a lot of potential to matter in Standard as well. It's Doubling Season. Have you ever heard of Doubling Season? It's reprinted in Foundations. When you look at Doubling Season, you might think 5 mana for a permanent that does nothing on its own is a lot in today's Magic the Gathering economy. But the card's interaction with Planeswalkers in particular is why it makes this list. Most Planeswalkers that you're going to even cast with Doubling Season will enter the battlefield ready to ultimate. And that, in my most humble of opinions, is worth spending 5 mana ahead of time. Funnily enough, a Doubling Season type effect was already legal in Standard, the level 3 mode of Innkeeper's Talent. Some players were using the talent in tandem with Vraska, Betrayal's Sting, to kill their opponents. Unfortunately, Doubling Season doesn't quite work the same with Vraska since it doesn't double the counters that you put on players. Still, its interaction with other Planeswalkers could make room for a Golgari Super Friends list, ramping into Doubling Season and then casting Liliana of the Veil, Liliana Death Horde General, or even Vivian Reed. Alright, we're up to the top 2 best reprints from Foundations for 60-card formats. Coming in at number 2, we have... The second most impactful reprint in Foundations is a kind of card that had once been a red line for Wizards of the Coast in Standard. Day of Judgment. Day of Judgment is just Wrath of God without the can't be regenerated text, which in today's era of Magic is mostly irrelevant. For several years, Wizards Research and Design had a rule of no 4 mana unconditional Wraths for Standard. Then in Theros Beyond Death, they printed a 4 mana Wrath with a pretty significant downside. Shatter the Sky. 4 mana Wraths that sometimes drew your opponent a card then became the new norm in Standard, with cards like Depopulate and No Witnesses. Here we go. We've saved the best for last, and in my opinion, the gap between number 1 and number 2 on this list is wider than the gap between any 2 other cards on the list. You may have guessed what it is already, though. Lana War Elves is back in Standard, baby! And it will absolutely be one of the best, most powerful cards in the format for the next 5 years. 1-mana accelerants are very strong in Magic the Gathering, but they get stronger the lower the power level of a format gets. If 1 and 2 mana plays are not that strong, then casting a more powerful 3 mana play on turn 2 and a 4 mana play on turn 3 is just really, really good. The last time a turn 1 mana dork was in Standard was when Lana War Elves was printed in Dominaria and M19 back-to-back, and that was back in 2018. It was only legal in that format for a little over a year, but while it was legal, it certainly made its mark. And you know what? I believe it will be better now than it was then. 3-drops have gotten a lot stronger than they were in Dominaria Standard. Back then, Lana War Elves was ramping you into a turn 2 Jadelight Ranger or Steel Leaf Champion. Now they'll be ramping you into Glissa Sunslayer, Loot Exorbitant Explorer, Unstoppable Slasher, Sentinel of the Nameless City, Overlord of the Hauntwoods, and you know what? I could go on and on. And that's because there are a lot of powerful 3-drops in Standard right now, and there will surely be even more over the next 5 years. If your opponent plays a turn 1 Lana War Elves, especially if they went first, and you don't have an answer for it, your chances of winning the game plummet immediately. If you're deciding between casting a 1-mana creature of your own or removing their 1-mana creature, remember to cut down that elf and put it back on the shelf, or your opponent's graveyard. Again, there's over 350 reprints in this set, and this is just 10 of them, and just the ones we focused on for 60-card formats like Standard. If you want to see me actually sit down and play Standard with Foundations cards, tune in on Monday, this Monday, for a Standard episode of Shuffle Up and Play with Covert Go Blue, Jesse Robkin, and my actual former student, Krim, as we brew up lists and jam them against one another. It's Standard Shuffle Up and Play with Foundations this Monday. And if you are attending a Foundations pre-release or just drafting at your local game store, check out our complete limited guide to Foundations. It'll tell you everything you need to know for draft, for sealed, or even just a pre-release event. That video is live already, it was yesterday, and linked in this video's description. Or, just look at yesterday's video. Look at last week's video. Look at an old video, but this is a good one too. Draft Foundations or do sealed. It's great. Yeah. And remember, there's never been a better time to get a good night's sleep with Helix Sleep. Pick up a Helix mattress today, and you can get 25% off site-wide, 2 free pillows, and a free bedding bundle if you get their Luxe or Elite mattress. It's all going on right now thanks to Helix's Black Friday sale, running for a limited time. So check out the links in this video's description, and if you want to upgrade your mattress, all you have to do is visit helixsleep.com/Tolarian to get that 25% discount. I really sleep on a Helix mattress and I love it. I've done so for years and I think a better night's sleep is just a Helix away. Thank you, Helix Sleep, for sponsoring this video.
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
Today, I have invited Absolute Luminaries and Jimmy.
Yes!
Because we are doing a Commander boxing game, drafting old Magic the Gathering booster boxes. Feel free to rip open your booster packs. What'd you get?
What'd you get? Cyclonic Rim! On the first pack?
Oh, come on!
Profits, no blockers.
Wow.
All
All right, I go to 34. If I can find the thing on the
It's a spin down profit.
So many basics.
You're basic.
Kathleen.
Oh, are you thinking about sacrificing something?
Just to kill his looter.
It's so rude of you.
I know.
I love your style.
I'm so happy when I said yes to coming up here.